This is the meeting of September 14, 2015 Board of Selectmen of the Town of Auburn. This meeting is being recorded. Is there anybody in the audience recording this meeting also? And we have one from the Telegram and Gazette. Thank you. Being none others, we will rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, under public comment, we have Mr. Wayne Page on the T&G. Wayne.
Good evening. Wayne Page, 90 Old Common Road. At a Housing Authority meeting, there were some statements made on issues pertaining to what happened down where the child had passed away. And during that discussion, there was a time when I had got a little bit taken back because my daughter had passed away 4 years ago in August, in the same time span as this was going on. I briefly kind of lost it a little bit, but the problem is the statement that was made by the T&G had in the newspaper saying it was a 1-year anniversary. I never, ever said anything about her being 1-year anniversary. It's not true. And I only came up here because it's my daughter. I know what I said, and I just couldn't let it go. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Mr. Platoukis.
Through the chair, my name's Bob Platoukis, 231 Millbury Street. 3 items on energy. A lot of people don't realize it, but National Grid, when you move to Auburn, you're automatically, I believe, a member of National Grid. If I'm wrong, incorrect about that, let me know. National Grid is an opt-out system. So I know there were some people with their municipal aggregation that were questioning the new possibilities as, gee, we're changing it to an opt-out system. They're in an opt-out system. And in order to get out of National Grid, you have to opt out. And it's not easy. It'll probably be 2 billing periods before they let you go. And hopefully that's not going to be winter months. The second thing, if you're buying new energy efficient appliances, computer, TVs, I was lucky enough to just run into a person who told me you could get free recycling of up to 3 of these items in 1 day, which means you can go back another day and do 3 more. And that's at Best Buy. And I don't have any stock or interest in Best Buy, but for those people that are waiting for our recycling day, I tried it, called them up, they brought a dolly out, put the 2 items on the dolly, an old monitor, an old computer, and said bye to me. Took it inside, and they recycle it. So I think that's a tremendous thing for a company to be doing and could save someone $30, $40, $50 depending upon what it is that they're recycling. The third item, I would like to thank all those people over the years. It's been 9 years now since I've been on the Wind Turbine and Alternative Energy Committee. And I will be leaving on the 25th of this month. But I want to thank all those people who were in support of myself and the programs as they went on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, it is now 7:05. We have some hearings in front of us. First one is Marcos Rosa, doing business as Starters Distributors and Body Shop. Auto repair license at 848 Southbridge Street in Auburn.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to open the hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Will you state your name and give us a little information on what your plan is?
Good evening. My name is Marcos Rosa, and The plan is that we're trying to do an auto body shop in the town of Auburn. Just consists of just auto body, nothing as mechanic or auto repair, and the mechanic feel of it. So that's basically all we're doing there.
Okay, is there any questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I guess
Mrs. Goodrich.
it may be for Mr. Benoit. I see that, that they first went to DCG in December. Is there a reason for the delay? Was it because they had to go to other boards?
Yes, through the chair, they had to go for an aquifer permit in Zone 2 from the ZBA and a multiple business special permit from the planning board as well as site plan approval.
And
All of those have been achieved by the applicant to date.
Okay. And in favor of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Actually, one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So I assume that, that those approvals through the planning board have all the conditions for the building, be it any special equipment, drainage, spray booth, whatever? Those conditions are in the planning board decision?
Yes, through the chair, it's very similar to one of the conditions on the DCG memo that they would obtain necessary approvals from planning, fire department, board of health, and building department prior to occupancy.
Perfect, great, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Carpenter?
Yes. I just wanted to ask, I visited the site the other day, and I noticed that there were 4 cars on the upper part, which is all grassed. 3 of them didn't have plates, 1 did. And the tow truck was also half on, half off the paved surface. So, and then on the left, also on a grass surface, was a boat. Are those going to be removed?
Yes.
Okay. Because you know there's an ordinance in town that no parking of any vehicles on grass surfaces. They have to be on paved surfaces,
Okay.
okay? That's all I had.
Okay, anything else? Now, just through your application here, this is the first time you've had a body shop. Have you had a body shop in any other location?
In Southbridge.
In Southbridge?
Yes.
Okay, because have you ever applied to license to repair motor vehicles? And it says no, so I wasn't sure if there were any others, but there was, you were in Southbridge.
Yes.
Do you recall how long that had been?
It was about a year ago, but it was grandfather in the place, so I didn't need to apply for a license or nothing, because it was a body shop already.
I see, okay. So you have met with the DCG and you understand all the requirements set by the DCG with all your permits. And as Mr. Carpenter noted, everything will be on paved parking. There'll be no unloading of cars and anything on Route 20 anywhere, so.
I understand, sir.
Is there any other questions, comments? Are there any abutters here? Questions, comments? Okay, have you got anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions, shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded to approve the license. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Good luck.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Okay, it is just after 7:10, so we'll move on to the next one, the J&J Truck and Auto Repair. Auto Repair license at 121 Southbridge Street in Auburn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to open the hearing.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Would you state your name and explain a little bit about what you're going to be doing?
My name is Charles Pingitori, and I'm going to be operating an auto repair shop at 121 Southbridge Street in Auburn.
Okay. And by your license, it looks like it's going to be working on cars to medium-duty trucks, oil changes, brakes, exhaust, tune-ups, motor work, and tires. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Will there be any painting done there?
No.
Okay. Is there any questions? Yes, Mrs. Goodrich.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Benoit the same questions. Have they been through any other boards to receive permits, and do they have conditions already placed on those?
Yes, through the chair, they've applied and received their Aquifer 2 special permit. They've also received site plan approval and a special permit for multiple business use.
So those conditions are listed on any necessary approval from town boards?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Carpenter?
Just have a quick question, Matt. Is the parking, I drove up there the other day, it seems like it's grindings on the back part, only like the opening is paved. There's no drainage on the property. Are they going to stripe? Did the planning board, what conditions did the planning board place?
Through the chair, they placed a condition that all vehicles for this business be placed on the paved surface up front. I'd have to defer to the applicant about striping. There are 3 spots available here. And there's a sign out front and a mailbox in which they couldn't park within 20 feet of the sign in both directions, and then 1 space in front of the building. So it's looking at 3 spaces total, and then the rest of the vehicles be parked inside the building. The rear portion of the lot is for the pre-existing use for the landscaping business.
Okay. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, just the sketch that we have here of the property, I know the property well. You only have 3 spots for parking. That's for employees, customers, what is that?
Customers.
For customers. Where will your employees park?
Probably just to the side of the building.
Alongside the building?
Yep, right by in front of the house.
Okay. I'm not sure, to Mr. Benoit, is there room there for parking there, and should it be, it's not a paved surface there?
Right. Mr. Chairman, the minimum requirement for this facility is 3 spaces.
Okay.
He's got the 2 employees and then 1 customer parking, given the size of the facility. So the 3 spaces allocated in the front, I believe 2 should be for employees, the other for the customer.
Okay, so there'll be only 1 spot for customers.
Yep.
And then you also have, that building is pretty good size with the equipment that they used to have in there. If you get extra business, they come in, where are they going to park?
Most of my stuff is appointment, and the majority of it's all account work.
Okay, so, but most of it, is there any way that you can do walk-ins?
Yes, I can, but I wouldn't, if the parking lot's to capacity, I wouldn't take anything, and I just rebook them.
Okay, all right. All right, any other questions, comments? Are there any abutters? Okay. Have you, yes, Mrs. Goodrich?
No, if you had another question.
Yeah, just, have you got anything else you want to add
No, I think
before we finish?
I think I'm pretty well set.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the license, provided that all the applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second?
Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good luck.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's after 7:15. We have a street layout hearing for Paul Revere Road, and we have the applicable documents in our packets tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Mr. Coyle is here also, DPW, representing the engineering, so we might want to invite him up as well.
Okay. Mr. Coyle, would you come up and join us, please? Thank you. Okay, this has all been through the planning board, and you are back to us tonight for?
Through the chair, as you're aware, a couple weeks ago at the previous Selectmen's meeting, I was before you, and we had scheduled the layout hearing for this evening. And since then, I had conducted a final walkthrough of this project. This is Deer Run Estates, Paul Revere Road. After that walkthrough, I had developed a punch list of items and provided those to the contractor, Mr. Bill George, who's here this evening with us also, and he has completed all the work relative to the engineering side of the project, and I prepared a letter recommending that or that all the work had been completed in conformance with the original plan. So there's no further outstanding items relative to the engineering aspects of the project. It is a 800-foot roadway with a 50-foot right-of-way, and I found that all the work has been conducted in accordance with the plans.
Any questions or comments? This has been a great project. I mean, this has turned around. The town planner and I were talking about it earlier, how much of a turnaround it was, and the road was cut, and then all of a sudden it's developed, and it's in great shape over there. It's a nice-looking project, and
certainly. And I'd like to add, I mean, it has been a pleasure working with Mr. George. Anything I've asked him to do, he's been right there to make any changes, and I've had no issues at all, and I think he's done an excellent job out there.
okay. We have documentation in our package tonight for the layout hearing itself, and the planning board advised the Board of Selectmen that they are in favor of the roadway being laid out and moved to the town meeting for acceptance, which will be the fall town meeting. And as Mr. Coyle has announced that the engineer's office has conducted the final review, and you've heard his report. Have you got any questions or comments?
No. Good, I will comment, actually. It's good to see that we have a road that's been completed satisfactorily, and we're not concerned about keeping a bond and how much was the bond, so congratulations.
And completing in a timely manner.
Yes, thank you.
And the developer is here. Would he care to say anything tonight?
Microphone.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Bill George from Wingspan Properties. As Mr. Coyle said, we have completed the project, and we would like to thank the Town of Auburn, the Planning Department, Highway Department for all their great work, and they've been a pleasure to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any people from the neighborhood who would like to speak on it? Yes, would you come forward and identify yourself?
Greetings. I'm David West. Brought my other half with me too, Vicki Nicholson. We are residents at 7 Paul Revere Road, and we're living witness to the road being perfect. We drive it. We got newer model cars, so once we get out on older roads, and of course, I'm from the South, potholes, they get kind of doing a number. But Paul Revere Road is nice. We're happy. We're in support of the builder. We saw the town. Didn't know how you got your head way down in that drain, but I saw you. But we think everybody, the town and the developers, did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I'll just comment that I think it's great that an abutter came forward and commented in a positive fashion. Generally, it's those that have concerns or issues, so thank you for the compliment to the developer as well as to the town employees. I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Now I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the layout of Paul Revere Road from Barn Street to the end of Paul Revere Road for a total distance of approximately 800 feet, as shown in the plan for B&R Survey Incorporated, entitled Paul Revere Road, Auburn, Mass., dated August 12th, 2015.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I do have one question. With this motion, should it say that we are going to turn this over to the town meeting now? Do we have to include that in our motion? Or will this just automatically go as part of the warrant?
Through the chair, it will go, it's already a placeholder on the warrant, so it will go when you get to that point as the recommendation of the board to move forward on the warrant article.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if you could, we could have you sign the plan now, that would be easy.
Probably to leave it over there and lay it out on the counter so that there's room over there that we can sign it.
I could bring
I don't know, will you be able to bring it over here?
I'll be able to, I'll just get out of the way.
Of course it's upside down. Thank you.
Here's the marker for
Special pen.
Oh, yes, that's right.
this one here. Three copies. One is for the
Okay,
assessor.
now we can sign the ink.
Assessor, clerk.
I'm ready.
Okay.
It's going to slide
Do
it
I
down.
need a service, please?
All right, great, thank you. Yeah, now we can sign that with the ink.
That'll go down to Dan.
I'll sign them over there.
Regular ink on this one?
You didn't warn me that I had to sign these anymore.
No,
Thought I was done doing that.
you didn't get the memo? Oh, I'm sorry, Julian.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully there's so much.
That one, yep.
Thank you.
Copies?
Is that all three copies?
Great.
Sure.
Didn't realize
Thank you.
I still had to do that.
Do that, yeah.
Okay. Next on our agenda is communications, and we have one, it's an announcement from the Senior Citizen Real Estate Tax Work-Off Abatement Program from the Executive Director of the Senior Center of Elder Affairs. And each one of you have a copy of that in your packet, and I will read that so that we have some information for the minutes. And from September 4th, the Honorable Board of Selectmen, the Council on Aging would appreciate it if you would read the following at the next Board of Selectmen's meeting. The Town of Auburn is now accepting applications for the Senior Citizen Real Estate Tax Work-Off Abatement Program. Senior citizens over age of 60 may perform 125 hours of work for the town and earn an abatement of up to $1,000 per fiscal year towards their real estate property tax. You are eligible for this program if you were 60 years of age as of July 1st, 2015, are the assessed owner of the tax property and have an annual income of less than $30,000 if single or $35,000 if married. Your assets cannot exceed $50,000. That's excluding the home in which you reside and the car you regularly drive. Applications are available at the Lorraine Glick Norgren Senior Center, 4 Goddard Drive, or by calling 508-832-7799. Applications are due back at the Senior Center by Thursday, October 15th, at the close of business. And this comes from Mignon Murray, the Executive Director of Elder Affairs. And to the Town Manager?
Thank you. Thank you very much for reading this. I'd like to also add to this, just some for informational purposes, that we also have a Veterans Tax Work-Off Program. And all of that information is available on the town's website under the Veterans Affairs Department. Both of those, you can contact the assessor for further information and for processing the applications. If you want more information specific to the Veterans Program, you can contact the assessor, Cindy Cosgrove, or our Veterans Agent, Larry Corbin. We developed the program a year ago, following a vote of town meeting, and then later a vote of the Board of Selectmen to put this program in place. And again, all of the criteria and everything is on the town's website. We're really encouraging veterans who are eligible to apply for this program. If you're not sure, call the office. If you are eligible for the senior program, even if you're a veteran, we're going to put you into the senior program first to free up more slots on the veteran side for those who are non-senior eligible. So we do have both of these great programs, and we really hope to see veterans and senior residents take advantage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, we want to, the applications are due back at the Senior Center by Thursday, October 15th, at the close of business. Okay.
And through the chair, if I can,
Yes.
on the Veterans Program, we can give a couple of extra weeks on that program because the seniors have to get their applications in because we have to start doing the placements. The veterans, they would be fewer. We have 5 slots available. So the veterans, we could wait until probably, around October 15th would be fine, but if we haven't filled the slots, we don't want to shut it off, so that one we can continue.
Very good. Any other comments from the board? Thank you. Okay, under Board of Selectmen general items, we have a one-day beer and wine license for Creedon and Company Incorporated at Sheldon's Harley-Davidson, 914 Southbridge Street, for Saturday, September 19th, 2015. And you have in your packet the information that goes along with this. Is there anybody here from Creedon and Company? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is, excuse me, John Creedon from Creedon and Company.
Okay, and your plan is for what at the Harley-Davidson on Southbridge Street?
It's for this Saturday. The Sheldon's dealership is going to host an event from approximately 12 to 4. Creedon and Company will be selling food and refreshments to folks who show up for the sale.
Okay, so it will be food and it will also be beer and wine?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Comments? I see in the, okay, Mrs. Goodrich.
Well, I just wanted to mention, because it's in the conditions with the DCG, and I think this is something more that that Sheldon should be aware of, is the recommendation that the applicant shall hire a police detail if overflow parking is made available on the opposite side of Southbridge Street. And in the past, when we've issued these licenses, there was a concern with people just pulling up on, I actually saw them too, cars just stopping and parking along Route 20, assuming that the lot was full inside. So and I looked at the application, it's approximately 300 you're expected to feed?
Roughly.
Is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah. So if they have 300, I would prefer that they have the police detail either way to handle the traffic in and out.
I would echo those comments also, seeing that Route 20 has been improved on. It is a divided road now, and so we have a little bit more restricted flow of traffic there, and I think it might be a good idea to do that. So,
and you have pedestrians crossing where there's no crosswalk at the time.
Yes.
Now that we have the barrier the entire length.
Okay, in the DCG, and you've met with the DCG already.
Last week, and I did communicate that condition to the folks at Sheldon's.
Yes.
So would that be a condition for the next agenda item, the entertainment license, or is that going to be a condition for this food or strike that, beer and wine license?
Okay, let's see.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I addressed it at this time because it's listed. It appears that the DCG took both licenses at the same time.
Oh.
So the document that we have is for the one-day beer and wine license and outdoor entertainment license. So it's on both, although it would apply more for the operation and the entertainment license. I brought it up now because it's on both documents.
Oh.
With the understanding that it's more Sheldons who are responsible for this.
Yeah, and what it says here is the applicant shall hire a police detail if overflow parking is made available at the opposite side of Southbridge Street. So, yeah, that may be a little difficult coming across the Jersey barriers there, but whoever is out there working at it will define the program and make it work.
Sure.
Have you got, Mrs. Goodrich?
And I'll just say that it's, in that section, it's not a Jersey barrier, so I think it would encourage people to cross the street because it's no higher than, what, 6 inches? So it's easy to cross the street in that area, therefore my additional concern. So I would like to see it as a condition that, shall, not may,
Okay,
hire a police officer.
great. Has anybody got anything else? Have you got anything else?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing. Actually, it is not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing, right?
I will make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void. And with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license, with a slight modification, we'll add another to require for the period of, 9 to 4, that they have a patrolman on site.
Okay, so
Traffic detail.
you're adding to that, have a traffic detail by the police department from 9 till 4.
Yes, that seems to be the,
9 to 4?
it is, it seems to be 9 to 4.
Okay.
Mr. Creedon has a comment.
Yes, Mr. Creedon.
So my understanding is that the food, I guess I'm a little confused. My understanding is the food and refreshments will be served from 12 to 4. So that's really when the event is kind of running here.
And we have another license here that shows 9 to 4.
Right,
it's
and we're working
entertainment.
on the one-day beer and wine license, so we're talking about, they've included the DCG comments for the,
Well, I can amend it to 12 to 4, but on the other license, I'm going to say 9 to,
okay, so you want
9
to
to
amend that,
12,
you want
so
to
it
make it,
doesn't-
you want to make it a 12 to 4?
yeah.
Okay. All right, that'll be fine?
Great.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Actually, I think that we may not need that amendment on this one because it is going to be covered by Harley Davidson on the second one. If you feel we need to have it on there, we can do that. Otherwise, we are going to cover it on the second motion.
Well, you have 2 separate licenses doing 2 separate things, so it would make sense to have it for both.
Okay,
But
very good. So this one will be
doesn't matter to
from,
me.
this one will be good from 12 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
now we move on to the one-day entertainment license. And this is for Sheldon's Harley Davidson on 914 Southbridge Street for Saturday, September 19th. And you have in your packets information for that also. Okay, is there any questions or comments from the board?
Nope.
Yes, Mrs.
Just the
Goodrich.
same concern that we have a police officer on site to direct the traffic, considering the new layout of Route 20.
Okay.
There's nothing, I'll make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state, town, and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license, with the additional caveat that there be a traffic detail from 9 to 4.
May I?
Second.
Second, I'm
Not sure
sorry.
when it's appropriate to
I'm sorry.
comment.
Yes, Mr. Creedon.
The folks from Sheldon's asked me to appear for this agenda item as well, and I think that the condition from the DCG was for a traffic detail to be on site when there's overflow parking. So if there's not overflow parking from 9 to 12, which I don't believe that there's much going on, so that would just be kind of a significant cost to the folks at Sheldon's if it's really not necessary.
The DCG is advisory. This is our license. We determine what the conditions will be upon it, and this is a condition that has been requested by a board member, so the condition will be on it. From what I understand, it gets pretty hectic at that location, so it would be important that people cross safely if they need to between the hours of 9 and 4. So yes, it will be a significant investment, but unfortunately, that's my motion.
Mrs. Goodrich?
And I thank Mr. Carpenter for recognizing the concern. I mean, I would be comfortable with even 11 to 4. I don't expect that there'll be a huge crowd, but I would expect that they'll start having traffic coming in around 11 for the 12 o'clock event. I don't think it has to be at 9.
All right, I will amend it to 11 if that's what you would like.
I'm perfectly happy with that.
And then to be clear, a single police detail would suffice both license conditions, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
In my...
And you've made a note of making it 11 to 4.
Correct,
For
I
the police
amended that,
details.
yes.
Okay. All right. Is there any further question or comment?
Yep.
Being none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Creed.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay. Now in front of us, we have a drain layers license from Paul R. Morris Sr., doing business as Morris Excavating Company from Leicester. Also, we have application documents and recommendation of our sewer superintendent, Jeff Mitchell. Is there any questions, comments? Yes, Mrs. Goodrich.
Per our policy of not requiring the applicant to be here for a drain layers license, and everything that we require has been provided, I make a motion to approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its boards, commissions departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all of these conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, now we have gift acceptances. One for the fire department from Charlotte Sabagonis, and it's for $20.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the board accept this with gratitude.
Is there all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And from Ed and Ellie Olson, $50 to the Auburn Animal Shelter in memory of Matthew Jacobson.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept this with gratitude.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We have no proclamations in front of us tonight.
Mr. Chair.
Second donation.
It was stapled.
Oh, okay, sorry. And back to gift acceptances, stuck together here. Stacia J. Smith for $25 for the Auburn Animal Shelter in honor of Matthew Jacobson.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept it with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, I want to thank everyone for their donations on behalf of Matt, and just Ellie Olson and her husband, that's wonderful. And also Stacia Smith turns out to be my son's fourth grade teacher who read about it and knew, he sent me a note and said she remembered he loved animals, so sent that for the Auburn Animal Shelter.
Nice.
So my family thanks everybody.
Great. Thank you. Okay, under town manager items, response from the planning board on the registered marijuana dispensaries draft bylaw received from the Board of Selectmen on July 29, 2015. And I'll turn this over to the town manager. Ms.
All right,
Jacobson.
thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over to the town planner, but just by way of background, and Matt will explain it. But initially, as you know, we came to the Board of Selectmen with a proposal for a marijuana dispensary, RMD bylaw, and that was sent to the planning board. And Matt can explain the details, but the gist of it is the planning board at this time would like to have more time to look at that, didn't want to rush it to get it on the fall town meeting. Another option for them is a moratorium, and just to explain, several years ago when the law was passed, there are several communities in Massachusetts that tried to put moratoriums in place. Some were approved by the AG, Attorney General's office, and some were not. Ultimately, the Attorney General's office made a decision that no moratorium would extend beyond December 31, 2014, because they felt that that gave communities ample time, if they were going to make any changes, to make those changes. At that time, our planning board had looked at it and determined no changes needed to be made, and we're going to move forward, leave everything as is and move forward and see what would happen. Since that time, under the new governor's administration, the Department of Public Health has revised their regulations. And I'm just repeating pretty much what we said when we came to you before, but just by way of background. When they revised the regulations, they become a little bit less restrictive and a little bit easier to cite these facilities. It's now based on market rate as opposed to a set of criteria that nobody seemed to be able to meet under the old criteria. So when that happened, we had contacted the Attorney General's office to see if they would be considering allowing moratoriums, given that there have been revisions to DPH's regulations. They could not tell us for sure whether they would approve it or not, other than they said that if we made a good argument as a town that the regulations had changed and the planning board wanted time to move forward to entertain a new bylaw, and it was a specific amount of time, that they may be willing to consider it. So again, this has to go through the process. It's the same thing as a bylaw revision. Follows the exact same process, which is why we're back again, because the vote you took for the first marijuana bylaw was not the same as the moratorium. So we have to go back through the process. Just want to make everyone clear, though, even if it gets through town meeting, the final step is approval by the Attorney Generals. We don't know if they will approve it or not, but that's what we're trying to do. So if I could, I'd like to turn it over to Matt, and he can explain the model that we're using for the moratorium and the fact that it's received town council approval.
Sure. And through the chair, furthermore, on what the town manager has said, some of the guidelines and guidance for municipalities submitted by the DPH were just modified in August, and that had been done after our draft was proposed. So although some of the language in our draft bylaw showed reference to some of the previous changes in April and May, it did not take into account some of the more recent changes. So there's still more language that needs to be modified, hence the planning board's decision to take some more time with this, in addition to review of a 6-page new draft bylaw into one section. So that's their need for time. This moratorium is, as their alternative, so they can work on this, came from a template that we received from the town of Burlington, Mass., which the Attorney General recommended to as one of the moratoriums that was approved in the past. So we use the language from that, in addition to adding language about the changes for April and May of 2015 and the August 2015 guidance. So this moratorium hopefully would give the planning board time to finish a review of the draft in time for annual town meeting this coming spring.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
Sorry.
Yes,
and
that's all
furthermore,
right.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. So
not a problem.
What's before us now, the planning board voted to take no action on the bylaw as our first item in the agenda for item 6A, so that we could focus on the moratorium on the next section.
Mrs. Goodrich.
So I guess I just have a question on the timeline. So we're holding off on the bylaw. This is going to fall town meeting for a moratorium, and in the meantime, we'll work on the bylaw to be brought to town meeting in May or the fall of next year?
Correct. So the planning board, just because this, through the chair, just because this came to them from the Board of Selectmen or endorsed by the Board of Selectmen, as town staff created it, they took no action so they could formally work on it and submit it as their endorsed item at a future meeting.
One follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And you said the Attorney General has looked favorably on these temporary moratoriums?
I'll defer to the town manager on this.
Through the chair, initially, when the law was first passed, I believe in 2012, the Attorney General's office did endorse or approve some moratoriums as long as they had a limit. Some communities tried to put a 3-year moratorium or 2-year or a moratorium that had no deadline. And the Attorney General's office ruled that they did not believe that that met the intent of a moratorium, which is temporary, so that there is time to put something together. So they did put a deadline on all moratoriums of December 31, 2014, and they have not considered any since then. However, with the changes in the regulations, we are hoping that they will consider allowing new moratoriums. Right now, it's their final decision on this was that no moratoriums would go past December 31st, 2014. As of the date I called, which was in maybe May or June, as soon as the first change came from DPH, I called to find out what can we do about it. Now that there are changes, can we do anything? And at that time, they had not received any requests for moratorium from any community, but told me that they were not at liberty to say whether they would support this or not, or whether they endorsed it, but they did guide us toward the town of Burlington for proper language to use, and they felt that if we used that as a model, and we made a good argument, that perhaps they may weigh in on it favorably.
And furthermore, to support the town managers, I also spoke with the Attorney General's office, and they said that don't request for too long of a period if you're doing that, and also make sure you cite the more recent changes of the bylaw in your moratorium, which we have done.
Okay, and the planning board is well aware of, that shorter period of time to get that done?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Carpenter?
Just had a quick one. One would be, obviously, 2012, we had a different Attorney General, so we have a brand-new Attorney General, so hopefully she'll look at it with fresh eyes. The last I had read in the press, there was no approved licenses, even in proximity to Auburn. Has that changed? Can the state tell us that? Will they tell us that?
From what I understand, and through the chair, I've read a couple articles recently for some proposals in the area. One of them was in the town of Shrewsbury. Another one was in the town of Webster. They had gone to the Board of Selectmen for their support at those times, but nothing's been formally opened yet, to my knowledge.
And I believe there is a growing facility that has been approved in Sterling, still in the Worcester region.
Yeah.
And as Matt said, the other two I don't believe they've been approved yet, but they're moving through the process. Actually, I believe they may have received their state approvals, but, no, I'm sorry, they would be waiting for the local approvals on that, so they have not.
Okay. Anything else?
Good.
Okay. Then we'll
Do you want a motion?
Well, I guess we were talking about the response from the planning board, so before we get a motion, I'm going to go to the draft bylaw moratorium.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to say regarding that before we take a motion on that to move it along?
I do not, sir.
Okay. If there's nothing else, anybody else from the board? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like a motion to transmit to the Planning Board per Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the 9.3.13 temporary moratorium on registered marijuana dispensaries.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next we have the St. Vincent Community Healthcare Fund Grant. And this is for an application for application acceptance of the grant funds. And the grant amount would be $1,000. I'll turn that back over to Ms. Jacobson.
Thank you very much. The Town of Auburn Council on Aging and Senior Center have applied for this funding previously in past years, and it helps to subsidize certain transportation up at the Senior Center, Rides for Health. So we've had good luck with this in the past. The amount has decreased. I think the first year, maybe 3 years ago, was $1,500, then it went to, I think, $1,300, then $1,200, and we're at $1,000, but it's okay. It's still $1,000, and we still, would like to go forward, and we're grateful for the support.
Okay. Any questions, comments? I see here that the total program costs are $13,653.89, and that comes from the annual budget?
That, it does come from, it's budgeted annually. Part of that comes from the formula grant that we received from the state
great.
for the Council on Aging. So, I can find out the exact breakdown for you, but it is part of the formula grant.
Okay. And this grant is for $1,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we vote to authorize the application acceptance of grant funds. The grant amount would be $1,000. There is no town match required.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay. To item 6D, the Packajaw Golf Course report. In your packets, you have a note from Ms. Jacobson, the town manager, and also with the Packajaw Golf Course budgets, proposed budgets. And Mr. Coyle, thank you.
Good evening, again.
Yeah, so thank you, through the chair, to explain what's in your packet. So we've included both the report that's dated this evening with the proposed budget for the Packagug Golf Course and the town's recommendations for how to handle the operations, management, and maintenance of that course. We've also included in here the February 2014 initial report that we provided to the board, which set all of this in motion. So that is the second piece of your packet. So there are two reports. One, again, is just for your information, the 2014 report, followed up by the report this evening. So to summarize, Bill Coyle, DPW Director, Ed Kazanovich have done a lot of work on this. We have spent several months, upwards of a year, looking at the various costs, following up on that February of 14 study. That study recommended that the preferred option would be that the town operate, manage, and maintain the golf course once the contract with Johnson expires December 31st of this year. At the time, we said that we would go back and do further analysis to see if that made sense, if any other model would make more sense, if their prices had changed, if anything may have changed that would alter that recommendation. So based on that recommendation, we still feel strongly that the best course of action for the town would be for the town to take over all three of the operations, maintenance, and management. And in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Coyle, who can explain, but just one thing that we've always kept in mind, this is a town asset. We do have several people in the community over the years, many, who have contacted us who are concerned that they want to make sure the asset is maintained, and we agree with them. It is like any of our parks or any of our beautiful facilities. It's ours, and we need to make sure it's being maintained properly. There are different iterations of doing this. One of them is to outsource the maintenance component, and almost every community that we've looked at or have spoken with or met with who've done that, that is where they lose money, because it's very expensive to do that. So if you can do it in-house, there's a potential that you can not just break even, potentially make a small margin of profit. And I just want to be clear, on the report is too, the first 6 months of this, we would not be ahead. We would be behind almost $100,000 because there has to be an initial injection of capital into this to make this work. Annualized over a 12-month period, we would just about break even. We are assuming that for the first 6 years, we would be at that same level. Some years may be a little less because we don't know the condition of some things. Some things may need to be replaced that we were not aware of. But from everything we can see, we believe that will be how it would run for the first 6 years. In year 7, when the equipment lease is now completed because we've purchased the equipment, at that point we may be able to start to turn to see some revenues being generated. But we are not going into this with the intent of, this is not a large money maker. We want to cover our costs, break even. If we can make money, that would be great, but we want to maintain our facility. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Bill and Ed to explain the financial components.
Thank you. Through the chair, trying to think of where to begin, because we've had so many meetings on this, both Julie and Ed and myself, and we've met with other cities and towns that operate their own golf courses. We met with Green Hill. We visited Westboro, met with them as well, and the city of Gardner. I've also had lengthy discussions with the golf manager of the town of Natick, discussions, some more brief discussions with Lester Hillcrest and Bay Path and Bedrock. I can say from the meetings that we've had, there is definitely, as the town manager mentioned, there is a commonality that we're finding, that the golf courses that where you hire a private maintenance company to operate, and some of them, they're trying to they'll split the operations, and they might work in the clubhouse, but they're finding for the most part they're not making any money. And there are the golf courses that will, similar to what Auburn is currently doing, where they're leasing out the entire operations, and currently we do get a fee. I believe it's somewhere around $36,000 per year. But what some of the courses have also found was that when they've done that obviously those companies are here to make money, which they should be, and that they're finding that the maintenance and the upkeep of those courses are probably less than desirable. And we've heard that here in Auburn, that people, especially the golfers that frequent Packagug over the many years, 10, 20, 30 years, have seen the conditions of the course decrease. So what we're trying to do, obviously, is improve the course by taking over the operations, but also we're trying to have a business plan too, where in the long term, we're not losing money. Hopefully we do actually make a profit. I can tell you, in speaking with some of the courses that are completely operated by a private company and they're privately owned, and they felt that one individual had mentioned to me that they're sort of out of a negative in terms of competing against Auburn because we own the land. So we don't pay real estate taxes for the land, and they're paying $30,000+ a year in real estate taxes. So we're able to better compete against a lot of those other golf courses. So in meeting with them, we did develop a plan and an estimate, and I'd also want to point out, we also met with some of the other people that were involved with the golf course for many years. Back in June, they've had a lot of history. I won't go through all the names, but they were key players that have worked at the golf course, have operated the golf course, and gave us a lot of insight of how it's worked. And we've also talked with current employees of the Packagug Golf Course as well. So with all of these conversations and meeting with different other people involved with golf, we've come up with the plan. We've come up with the full-time employees, part-time employees, the cost for the fertilizers and chemicals, which are extremely expensive, loam, seed, gravel. We've looked at golf carts. Do we go with gas-powered golf carts? Do we go with electric-powered golf carts? What are the pros and cons with each? We've looked at the issues that we currently have with the water supply up at the golf course. They currently cannot operate the pumps that feed the pond at the same time as you run the pumps that you irrigate the tees and greens with. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. And currently this year, the contractor, Johnson Golf Management, has been purchasing water from Elm Hill because of the problems that they're having with the wells, and that is at a cost of, I believe, they're up to over $12,000 this year. And I believe that number will eventually come out of anything that they do pay to the town of Auburn. So in the end, we won't see the normal fee that we would typically get from them, because they would then, based on what the contract says, subtract out the cost of what the cost of the water is, because the pumps aren't functioning adequately. So in our estimate, we've also built in upgrading the power supply to 200 amp service down to the pump station, and also we've included either repairs or drilling of a new well. And that part, I think we still need to do a little more investigation on, in terms of to what extent of the work needs to be done to the existing wells. And I think part of what we want to do is upgrade the electrical supply first and see, and again, that's $15,000, and that's with the town doing the excavation work. So with that improvement in place, see how the well is then functioning and how it's able to feed the irrigation system to the tees and greens. So there's a lot that we put into this. Golf carts, we've found, are a huge revenue generator. It's the second highest revenue generator, other than the fees, the golf fees as well. And what we'll find is that if you don't have sufficient golf carts, there are players who want a golf cart, and if you don't have one, they won't golf and they'll leave, so you'll lose that fee as well. So we factored in 24 golf carts, although I've heard numbers closer to 27, 28, accounting for breakdowns, but we're hoping that, especially initially, these are going to be brand new. So we hopefully won't have breakdowns, but in time we may see that number of golf carts grow to 27, 28 from what I'm hearing and talking with other course managers. That's probably a more appropriate number in the long term once you do have breakdowns. So we've gone through this in great detail. I think we'll continue conversations with other towns as we move forward further into this and try to get any more information. It's amazing how many people out there are knowledgeable and have a lot of good and valuable information to add. So I'll be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. Thank you.
Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know, Julie, you mentioned that there might be some unseen cost when we take over the golf course. We have some contractual obligations with the current operators for some repairs and maintenance. What's the status of those, and how can we ensure that that will all be done before we take over the operation?
They, in their contract, were obligated, the last thing that they're working on currently, and I had a meeting on site on Monday, last Monday, was the fuel tank. It's a 250-gallon gas and 250-gallon diesel fuel tank. Actually, I think it was last Thursday, but in either case, they still have to finish the electrical work, and the town is going to be putting in pillars around it, just so that, vehicles can hit the tanks. That wasn't identified in the contract. It just said they had to supply the tanks. In meeting with the fire department, there's other things that they would like to see. We're also building a small wall to be able to retain any fluid if any of the gasoline or diesel were to leak. Even though the walls are double-walled, we will be able to contain the entire volume of 500 gallons between both fuel tanks. So they have installed the fuel tanks. They need to complete the electrical work. I know they were calling a electrical contractor last week when we were there. And then the last item is the drainage improvements on the 5th fairway. And I need to have some discussions with Johnson on that, because the town at the same time has a detention pond that we're proposing in that same general area. So we'll have to coordinate with them to what extent of work that they would do, where we're now moving forward with our own detention pond. So, but they have fulfilled the major items in the contract that they were obligated to do. But anything remaining, we'll continue working with them.
Thank you very much.
I do have some questions.
Mr. Carpenter.
I read it. I actually read the other report a while ago, and I met with the manager and asked what had changed, and she said, "I'll show you," and she did. So it's good work on that. My concern with the budget is I don't see, or I actually have a question about benefits. Are any of these individuals going to be entitled to benefits? And if they're not year-round positions, are they going to be able to file for unemployment compensation for the off-season?
Yes, and I was going to touch upon that when talking about what impact this is going to have on the fall town meeting. But to answer your question first, the full-time positions would be entitled to any other benefit than any other full-time employee is entitled to. Those costs would be identified, and it would be a component of a proposed enterprise fund that we are suggesting for the operations of the golf course. So let me get into the financials now. Maybe that will answer part of your questions. So what we would need to do initially first is proposing the creation of an enterprise account for the expenses and the revenue related to the operations of the golf course. Once that's established, we would then move forward and recommend amendment to Article 2, which would then create a budget for the operational expenses that total for at least the first 6 months, which would be at the fall town meeting for January 1 of 2016 through June 30th of 2016, approximately $90,000 to meet those costs. As part of that, that includes a full-time superintendent, a full-time groundskeeper, and seasonal groundskeepers, part-time, as well as seasonal clubhouse workers such as cashiers, to deal with the customers coming in. The seasonal employees, there are specific guidelines as to whether or not how you treat those seasonal employees. Normally, you can work in, I believe, in 10-week increments with a break in between. If you do that, then they're not allowed to apply for unemployment compensation during that period of time. So we're looking at that and trying to structure a model that would not expose us to any liability outside of the normal working hours or payroll they would be earning. Although the full-time employees may be entitled to benefits, some full-time employees may be retired employees on the groundskeeper side who may already have benefits. So that is an unknown, but we fully intend to capture all of those costs and identified under the enterprise method of accounting. We looked at different models of accounting for these costs, including a revolving account. I can tell you I had several discussions with a Boston rep from the Department of Revenue, as well as our local rep here in Worcester. I can tell you they highly recommended treating this and accounting for this in an enterprise fund account. The local rep indicated to me that all of his municipalities that he represents have golf courses do so through an enterprise account. And I would agree with that. That's the methodology that we are proposing and bringing forward at the fall town meeting. And there is one other article, and I think Mr. Coyle touched upon this in his presentation to you. There's an initial capital cost expense that we are proposing to fund through general fund revenues as a one-time initially. Future years, it would be covered through revenues in the enterprise fund. If in fact revenues are shy of expenses, there would have to be a subsidy from the general fund every year to cover that gap.
I just had two follow-ups, if I may. And it could be my misunderstanding. I thought the full-timers were not going to be 12-month positions. Are they 12-month positions?
I can tell you that the two full-timers in discussions with other golf courses, that the normal work week for these people through May through probably September, October is not 40 hours a week. So because we anticipate that they would potentially be working a significant amount of time over and above the 40 hours, they would be earning comp time. Yep. So our goal would be that we would hire a full-time groundskeeper that also has mechanical experience. So any of the equipment that we purchase, that person during the winter months will be able to do maintenance work on that equipment. And they probably wouldn't be working a full 40 hours because they would be utilizing some of the comp time that they've earned through the normal golf season. Any time, if they have any time available over and above working at the golf course, we could look at potentially shared resources with the DPW, where I'm sure we'll be also providing some shared resources to the Parks Department to the golf course. They could reciprocate probably in the winter months, perhaps with plowing operations. And so we'll make sure that we're utilizing their time effectively, but there would be two full-timers that would be year-round.
Okay. And then my other thing is going back to the master plan, and I did bring it up before on the conservation fee that we could add to a round of golf and put into a dedicated account. Is that going to be part of this?
Through the chair, we are proposing to put together a advisory committee of residents to make recommendations to town administration fairly quickly, assuming this passes in the October town meeting, that would provide us with recommendations on fees and charges. That was one thing that we know that Mr. Carpenter had asked for us to look at, and we will when we look at those fees. Our concern about doing that initially is we have to first of all make sure that the fees that are recommended to us are within market rate, because we've got to get people back to the course. So while it may not be something you'd be able to put in the first year, because that would just peel revenues off of the operating costs that you're trying to cover here with your revenues, over time, we would be asking that committee to look at it and see if that recommendation makes sense. What would the cost be? What would the fee be? Making sure that we stay within market rates. And we hope that this committee would look at an issue like that. We, right now, are not recommending any fees. We're hoping that that committee looks at the fees of all the competing courses, what's the market driving, what are they going to recommend we do, and then making sure, number one, that those fees cover these costs. If those fees do cover these costs, then what would it look like to add $1 to a price, and would that put us out of the market, or would we have to reduce our ticket price to incorporate that $1 in and still cover our costs? So it's definitely something that you had mentioned that you wanted us to look at. We just haven't made any decisions yet on the fees.
Fair enough.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Have you got anything else? Nothing on that?
That's it. Through the chair, you'll see more about this again. It will be an item on the, actually 2 warrant articles on the fall.
3.
Three. 3 articles. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Coyle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, moving on. the Freight Rail Pilot Project and Feasibility Analysis Report, which was good reading over the course of the weekend. A lot of information here and a lot of comparisons here between the town of Auburn and the town of Oxford. And those comments made, I will turn it over to Ms. Jacobson
Thank
to
you.
give us a little bit of background.
Sure. This, for those who hadn't seen the whole report, the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission had approached the town of Auburn and the town of Oxford last year, a little over a year ago, to ask if we would be interested in participating in a freight rail study to determine, with Providence and Worcester as a partner, to determine what, if any, opportunities would exist for freight-based economic development. And given that we do have a couple of vacant parcels that are served by rail, we thought it would be a good idea for us to participate and see if there are any programs that could help us attract freight-based economic development, what the pros were, what the cons were, what the impacts are, and how we should approach this. So we participated in the study along with Oxford, and that's why you see both of these communities. In the long run, I believe CMRPC is going to be expanding this, but we were the pilot, so-called pilot communities to start it, so we took advantage and said, sure, we'd love to be part of this study. As you can see, each community has some zoning issues that have to be addressed if either community wants to address either separately or as a region, the ability to attract freight-based rail development. And we thought the timing of this was excellent because in the coming year, we hope to be establishing a bylaw review, zoning bylaw review committee that would be taking these things on. So this would be, the timing is perfect for them to look at some of the recommendations that are made by CMRPC as to whether we should move forward on some of these. We're not recommending any of this now. We're just taking the report, sharing it with you, and we intend to share it with the planning board as well as with the zoning bylaw review committee. We thought it was an excellent study. There is one very large building on Millbury Street, 28 Millbury Street, that is rail served, and given the right dynamics and the right company, it could have an economic impact, a positive economic impact on the community, as long as the negative impacts can be mitigated through noise reduction strategies and other zoning, and that is recommended in here. There are some sources of funds that are recommended in here by CMRPC to pursue. Some we realize are very competitive, and the town may or may not be able to secure some of these funds because they're statewide and it's hard to get them, particularly the Mass DOT MassWorks grants. But there are some other things in here that if we had the right company coming in and was going to use the rail, that working with that company, we may be eligible for some grant funding for some upgrades to those rail spurs. So this is really just an informational. We wanted you to see what it is we've been working on for the last year with CMRPC when it comes to this one component of economic development.
Any comments? Well, I had a chance to take a look at it, and yeah, there could be some changes made to the bylaws, and which would probably help us out a little bit, but it seems like infrastructure may be part of what we'd be looking at also, because now if you have a rail spur and you have products coming in, the products can't just die in that one spot, they have to be moved by truck. So now we're going to have a lot of transportation over the road, and I guess depend upon, and I'm just thinking out loud here, that if we have that type of traffic over the roads, depend upon where it is and how it is, you know, the infrastructure may need some improvements, or we may have to upgrade a little bit more, so it might be a little bit of a cost to us, but CMRPC is going to help us out with developing some of those projects and taking a look at the whole plan as a whole. So I'm hoping that, from what I'm seeing here in the report, that looked like they've looked at a lot of different things, so they are thinking about, you know, whatever repercussions there would be with any type of a project that comes through. So I'm hoping I'm reading that right, and hoping that, you know, they take a good look at it all the way through. And economic development in the town is just an awesome thing, but at the rate, we want to be sure that it doesn't cost the town a lot of money to put the economic development in place. And I don't know if I'm reading that right or not, but that's what I'm interpreting. Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just am wondering, because we've seen a lot in the newspapers in local communities with the impact of these new rail projects and the impact they're having on neighborhoods, who's, you know, for lack of a better question, who's looking out for our neighborhoods and residents?
Through the chair, any of these properties that are on the rail study, given the two as a primary focus here that are vacant are going to end up through the planning board process regardless. And most of the time with such a large business, as I've seen in the past, in my experience, these businesses would be reviewed for traffic studies, peer reviews, and so on and so forth, public hearing notices to the abutters for these as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if even a couple of these businesses would be in front of multiple boards, given one I believe is its proximity to wetlands as well. So this would be regulated by our volunteer boards, our regulatory boards, before the business is open regardless.
Through the chair, there's also sections in here that CMRPC outlined what communities can do to negotiate with potential companies coming in to have them cover the costs of any types of road upgrades or betterments that need to be done. So it doesn't necessarily fall on the town to do that. Also, we have to keep in mind that the sites that were looked at are accessed by state roads primarily, as opposed to local roads. So it's also an enormous burden on the state as well that they would be looking to. Right now, the town, I would say the town residents are protected in that the way the zoning currently reads, we're pretty much precluded from having any kind of this activity. So right now, we're not going to really be able to take advantage nor deal with any problem. We're not going to get the good and we're also not going to get the bad because the bylaws right now are the way they're established, nothing will really meet the bylaws. Providence of Worcester said every company they've tried to work to get in here isn't going to be able to get cited here because of our bylaws. So unless those bylaws change, we won't be dealing with this at all. So this would go to a zoning bylaw review committee for consideration to see if those bylaws should be become less restrictive or should they become more restrictive, particularly in the noise area, which is the area that we were concerned about.
Yes, Mr. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just, in moving forward with this and looking at drafting bylaws, I just would ask you and the town manager to, to be very careful that neighborhoods are protected. And again, I'll just point out that I've followed these issues in other communities, and I believe the town of Grafton is in litigation right now, and the town of Upton has had issues, and I would just ask that we look to, especially safety issues for neighborhoods, look at safety issues before we support any proposal coming in.
And through the chair, right now we do rail does come through the town. So though we still have safety issues that need to be addressed because we still have trains coming through here, regardless of whether they're based here. Right now, they're going through. So the concept that had been proposed to us was rather than just having the trains go through and the town's getting no benefit, is there a way to have companies come in here that are already using those trains and perhaps put a location here where we actually get some economic development benefit as far as jobs? Clearly, the number one priority is the neighborhood, and I think the report does talk a lot about the potential impacts, the concerns that we would have. But again, right now, there's no need for concern because most of this can't take place anyway the way the bylaws are. The bylaw review committee really does need to look at whether the bylaws should be less restrictive or changed or left as is. So this report will be presented to both the planning board for their look as well as this future bylaw review committee. As you said, economic development isn't necessarily good development if it has negative impacts, so we do have to watch that, and we assure you we will.
And my understanding is it's not for the CSX, which runs on the west side of town, it's only for the Providence and Worcester rail line, correct?
Through the chair, this particular study was just for Providence and Worcester.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Carpenter?
I just have a question, and I see the town engineer is here, so I figured I would ask him, because they mentioned something about non-traditional traffic reporting, one of which is the daily truck trip generation rates based on the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, Synthesis 298. And I was just wondering if you knew anything about it, because I had never heard of it. We usually used ITT on the planning board, so.
I can't specifically comment on that, other than typically we normally assume 10% of your total traffic would be truck traffic. So, but yes, I agree with you. That's a different source that I'm not accustomed with either.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? And anything else from the town manager? Thank you. Okay, next we have the elementary school's reuse report. Ms. Jacobs?
Through the chair, again, this is purely informational for this evening. We did not, I mean, we will answer questions as we can. I will tell you just the history of this. We did put together an elementary school reuse disposition advisory group, as you know, and they started meeting in January. And by the end of May, they had worked very hard and had several meetings and came back with a recommendation to the town administration for the potential and most favorable disposition that they felt for both of the elementary schools, one being the Mary D. Stone School right here and the other being the Julia Bancroft School. And first of all, the school committee has not yet declared it surplus. They are awaiting the meeting that we have this coming Wednesday evening, which is a joint meeting with the finance committee, and then the chair is here, Kevin Hussey, as well as the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, and this is an agenda item. In advance of that, I wanted to make sure the board had the study that we received from NALT on Thursday afternoon. We also gave this report, the same item that you have in front of you, we also provided to the Finance Committee and to the School Committee, so it will be ready for discussion. I would tell you that the recommendation, the basic recommendation was that the town dispose of the Julia Bancroft property for the use of elderly housing, senior housing. How that is done, it would have to be done within 30B, Chapter 30B procurement. So we have to follow whether it had to be put out to bid, RFP, if there's any types of exemptions for public uses, for public housing. Those are things that we would have to look at if that decision is made to move forward. The Mary D. Stone School was, the recommendation of the advisory committee was to keep the fields that are here for playgrounds and used by the neighborhood, and to keep the Mary D. School building as a town-owned building to be used for an extension of town administration and operations, such as office space, meeting space. And anyone who was here at 6 tonight can tell you that we had 7 meetings going on in 2 rooms, which is kind of interesting. Talk about hallway management. People were in the hall, people were here, we were moving them around. We do not have enough meeting space, and we recognize that. Given that, we could use the space, there's no question. We are bursting at the seams here at Town Hall. Certain offices are bursting. The more we're required to document, the worse it's going to get. We have to keep files and records, and it's going to get worse forever and ever. So we have to look at a solution for that. However, before we as an administration made a recommendation to the board about what we felt we should do with that building, we engaged the services of NALT Architect. And I believe I told the board before that the chief architect that we dealt with is a graduate of Mary D. School. So he had been there, which is kind of interesting and neat, and he had gone to school there. And he, under the scope of services, we asked him to look at varying options for the use of that school. If it was used partially for office space and for storage, what would the code requirements be? If it was used just for storage, what would it be? If it was used for public meeting space, what would it be? What would any restrictions be? So that report just came back to us on Thursday. So you saw it within hours of us seeing that report as well. As a second component of that, we asked NALT Architects to give us just a thumbnail estimate of costs, and it really is just an estimate, because until we were to say exactly what we're going to do with that building, they can't really put specific costs on it. But as you can see from the report, there are a number of different triggers for certain code. For that building to be brought up to code, it is going to take an injection of capital. Under 86 or 85, 60 square feet, you don't need sprinkler systems. However, there's still some concerns that you might want to have them if you're storing documents and records. If you exceed 1.3 million on your costs, it triggers another code requirement that everything be handicapped accessible, and therefore you have to install an elevator. So as you can see from this report, there's a potential for significant investment that's needed into that building to keep it for town use. At a minimum, it appears it would be around $125,000 to $175,000 at a bare minimum if we just used a portion of the building, mostly just for internal use, mostly for a couple of non-public meeting areas, office space and storage, all the way up to probably $600,000 just for code-related improvements that are needed, and then could go even higher if we had to do any types of improvements to the outside of the building, to the landscaping, or to the inside as far as petitioning off rooms or fixing doors. The bathrooms need to be upgraded. They're for children, they're not for adults. So the building's not at code for use of what we need now. So you are seeing the report that we've seen. We did not want to make a recommendation on anything until we had a discussion with the three entities that we're meeting with this Wednesday night at 7, which again, it's the Finance Committee, the School Committee, and the Board of Selectmen. This is agenda item number 3 on that agenda, and we hope to have a healthy discussion on what the potential is for those schools and whether, what direction do the boards want to see us going.
Any comments? Okay, thank you. And next we have draft remote participation policy.
Yes, through the chair, at the August 24th meeting, the Board of Selectmen voted to schedule a vote for the September 28th meeting to give time for board members to be fully informed of what remote participation is all about and to come to the board with draft policy language for the board's consideration. So given that the vote was to have a vote on the 28th and that the board wanted to have time to consider a draft policy, I felt that the board should have a policy in today's packet to have 2 weeks to consider it if you are indeed going to vote it on the 28th, if that's what the board wishes. So what you have here is a draft policy that we put together. We looked at probably 12 to 15 different communities, really focused on about 8 of them, but there are so many communities in Massachusetts that have adopted this. Most of those communities appear to have also adopted a remote participation policy that further refines or restricts how remote participation is used based on cost, based on reasonableness, and based on the fact that most boards don't want to use remote participation as an alternative to attending a meeting. The primary focus of the Attorney General's office for all boards should be that you should encourage people to want to be at meetings and to be there whenever possible. Given that there may be circumstances that prevent that, then there may be certain restrictions for allowing that, but there are regulations set by the state. So this draft policy that you have in front of you incorporates the regulations that are the minimum requirements requested by the state, which are set forth in one section called minimum requirements, but they're also incorporated to later sections because there are additional minimum requirements. It also recommends a number of additional restrictions based on other communities and some of the restrictions that they had presented that may address some of our concerns, such as should you allow remote participation in every room if you don't have the capacity to carry that forth? You don't have the budget for it. We're not required to have a budget for it. So should we limit it? So a couple of the things that I just want to point out that we recommended in this draft policy just for consideration for the discussion of the board or of the subcommittee, as the case may be, would be number 1, to put a 1-year temporary interim period of trial for this. Many communities have done that. They put a policy into place and gave it a year to see how it works. And then you can come back and you can tweak it, you can change it, you could revoke it if it didn't work. You might find that it works wonderfully and you want to keep it. You may find it's not working and you need to make some changes. So in any case, should the board decide to take a separate vote, because again, the board already voted not to do this. So if the board takes another vote to go forward with this, I would recommend a 1-year trial period under a draft policy, and we can revisit it and see how it goes. The other thing that I would recommend is we liked looking at the communities that had policy, had procedures for regulatory boards versus non-regulatory boards. The regulatory boards oftentimes need to see the visuals. It would be very hard for a planning board member to participate if it was only audio. You have to see the plans. Certain plans are going to be brought in. Plans are brought in that weren't there in the original packet. And if a board member can't visually see those plans, they're not going to be able to make the appropriate decision with regard to that. So we liked those communities that restricted regulatory boards and commissions to having audio and video requirements. So you had to be seen, you had to see the member, and that member had to be able to see everything that all members at the table saw. And also, in keeping with planning board, we liked the restriction that said if if a planning board member or if a regulatory board member, whether it be Board of Health or Conservation, Planning Board, or ZBA, if they're not at the first hearing, then they can't participate in the remaining, even if it is remote. That's similar to state law that now says if you're not physically present at the first meeting, you're not able to participate in suing. It makes sense because if they were here for the beginning, they were physically in the room, they could see the plans, they could easily continue as long as they had audio. So those are kind of the keys of what we incorporated in here. Again, we put a proposed restriction on the number of times. Most communities that had their own policies had a restriction on how many times someone could take advantage of it, so it wouldn't be a regular thing. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be an exception to the rule, not the rule. So we kind of went middle of the road, not as restrictive as some, not as loose as some, and we're recommending that no more than 2 times per fiscal year, or 5 times per term if a term is 3 years or more, which pretty much comes to about 2 times per fiscal year. So those are the components that we thought made sense from other communities. The other one that we liked was the one that required, if we did adopt this, that every chair has to be trained by either Attorney Hennigan or his designee, whether it be one of us. We thought we could incorporate it into the annual Board and Commission training in the fall and have him as a component of that anyway, make sure that everybody knew what the regulations are. Because they are strict, the state is strict on it. This is transparent government. It's not to change that, it's to enhance it. So there are quite a few regulations that we have to make sure before anyone uses it, these chairs understand how it's to be used, when it's to be used, and why it's to be used. So the training component, I think, is important.
Thank you. Just as a note, we took our last vote. Mr. Carpenter made the original motion, and we weren't quite sure exactly how this was supposed to be proposed to the board, and so I called him and said that his idea was that the administration draft the policy instead of the subcommittee, and I want to be sure that the subcommittee is well aware of that. On the 28th, we have the ability to vote this down and not use a policy, or we can allow the policy to go to the subcommittee to have it be reviewed and brought back to us. So it's something for thought. You have a couple of weeks to take a look at it, make some notes, make some changes, questions, and then we will take the vote and determine whether it's to go to the subcommittee or whether it's going to be not a policy at all.
Mr. Chairman, I just had some, because we had it ahead of time, and with your permission, I just wanted to, because these are other officials, the planning board has asked something of this board, and reviewing it, I had some concerns about its usage and how it would be done. So I was going to ask, and I hope the board will support my request, that we seek a report from the planning board asking the number of times an absence has delayed an action, include the time of year, specify if it was a site plan approval or a special permit, or any timelines missed. How many times has the Mullen Rule been used by the board to...
How much, which rule?
Mullen Rule, which is if you miss a hearing, you can...
I didn't quite get it, yep.
So that is one. The other one is more of a concern on my part for the ZBA because, A, they don't have a phone and they often meet in this room, so they don't have access. And with the open meeting law posting requirements, my understanding is they can't do it. They can't go to the other room if, God forbid, something happens and they lack a quorum. The other regulatory boards traditionally do meet in the planning board room, so that shouldn't necessarily affect them, but it could certainly affect them. So I was going to also ask the board to support a motion to ask the town clerk if my reading of the open meeting law is correct, that the posting requirement says if you're posted in the Board of Selectmen's room, you have to host. You have to be here. You can't come into the Board of Selectmen's room and then announce on TV, we're going to the planning board room. My understanding is that can't happen, but she's the expert, I'm not, so I would really appreciate support for those two things. And I know the planning board is meeting next week, so they would have time to get us a report before the 28th. And I would hope that the town clerk would have the time to do so as well.
Okay. Well, first off, I guess if you're in the form of a motion, we'll take them one at a time.
Sure.
And the first one would be a report from the planning board for...
You want me to reiterate? I can actually give you this, Julie, if you want.
Yeah, that would be great. I want to make sure we have it
Please,
clear.
and just read it for us so that
I
we can...
will.
Please.
I would make a motion that we ask the planning board for a report specifying the following items. Item A would be number of times in absence delayed board action. Item B would be include the time of year. C would be to specify what kind of application. Was it a site plan approval or was it a special permit? Were any timelines missed, specifically constructive approval, anything else of that nature? And then lastly, item E would be how many times has the Mullen Rule been used? So that would be my motion.
Okay. The motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Goodrich?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Benoit if he feels that it's, adequate time to put this on the agenda and then expect a report back for our meeting. I mean, my sense is, and I'll just say, this is clearly much more involved than just taking a vote to authorize remote participation, and I think that we understood that at our last meeting. But if we are looking at this, the vote may be to continue and hold
Absolutely.
off the vote. I don't want to feel pressured and rushed to take this vote at our next meeting because it's been requested that we put this on the agenda without having adequate information and giving the planning board an opportunity not only to put it on the agenda, but effectively discuss it and also prepare a report. So I'm just concerned about the timeline that we're putting on the planning board, and I would hope that if they cannot get that report back to us, that, and again, I know it was your motion, Mr. Carpenter, to have it prepared for us, have the board prepared to vote on this at our next meeting, that I certainly would make a motion to delay that vote if we don't have adequate information.
Absolutely. And I would support that motion, Madam.
I think Mr. Benoit has a response.
Benoit,
on it.
please.
Through the chair, I believe that should be adequate time for the planning board. If Mr. Carpenter is okay with having, since I've been here, January to now, I know I can get you that data. Are you looking for the fiscal year or just for 2016? I can definitely get January, and I can answer some of those questions now, actually. Number one, we haven't had any constructive approvals at all since I've started. That hasn't happened at all. We haven't lapsed any timelines for any of the approvals, subdivision, special permit or not. And we've actually signed enacted the Mullen Rule 4 times, twice for one member and once for the other two. Some of the other information I can easily provide.
In that, attendance has been identified as a problem, and this is the reason that the planning board wants this availability. I know there are two members who have had some attendance issues for whatever reason, I don't know, and I'm not asking for it, but I would think it would have to go beyond that.
Of course.
Only because we need to know the actual. There is a proposal before town meeting, which I hope this board will support, for an alternate, which may make this entirely unnecessary. They're the only board that's asking for this. So, to me, I'd like at least a year's worth of information.
Okay.
I would, just as a comment, as an aside, I'd caution this board to be sure that we're not just focusing on one board, and that's what we're looking for, is at the planning board. There's other boards around that, and it would entail all of them, and so it's not focused directly on one board or commission. It would be, the vote would be for all or nothing.
I understand.
And I want to be sure that we're aware of that so that we don't just focus on one particular board.
No, my reason, Mr. Chairman, is because they've asked it specifically. No other board has asked us. So that's why I'm choosing to look at that board versus the other regulatory boards. They have not asked. And no other board in the town, as I'm aware of it, has asked since 2011, and I'm not sure who asked for it at that time. Obviously, that was a totally different board, so it is not a precedent for this board not to act on it, but that's why I'm focusing on the planning board. They seem to be suggesting that they're having problems getting attendance, they're having problems with their special permit attendance, they're having these issues. Well, if you're having problems, Mr. Benoit just said for the last 6 months they haven't had a problem. So why do we need it? Especially because we've now identified an alternate. If members can't attend meetings, when I was on the board, we had difficulty getting a quorum for those items as well. If members can't attend for a variety of reasons, I know one of the members served with me on another committee and her attendance was not great, shall we say, because of other outside commitments. So if those are the stressors, you know, it's a busy board. We appreciate their service, but again, if you're asking for it, you need to demonstrate why you need it. So if you don't need it, if you're not missing your deadlines, if you're not holding up people, you know, the Mullen Rule does work. People can use it. It gets around it. It does still complicate it. It pushes those deadlines. Mr. Benoit identified those in our very well-drafted letter. So that's why I'm focusing on them, as opposed to anybody else.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions?
Yes.
Mrs. Brotherton.
Through the chair, cost-wise, are we all set up in the planning board room to facilitate this? We would not need any extra equipment?
Through the chair, the planning board room could accommodate a video conferencing situation. One of the things that I recommended in the draft policy would be to put a statement in there that the town would not be responsible for assuming any of the costs that may arise because of a request, that those costs would be deferred to that member who made the request. Because if that member may not be set up at his or her residence or place of business, and there may be a cost that that resident has to assume for a web-based conferencing, the town should not pick up that responsibility. Likewise, the recommendation was, if we can't accommodate it in another room, then the chair should deny it. Towns are not required to provide the equipment. Even if you adopt this, the state has made it clear that they are not forcing a town to pay for that equipment. So if a regulatory board needs to have a visual and they can't fit it into the meeting and there hasn't been enough time to set it up and there's a conflict of meetings, it may not be able to happen. But if it can happen, we're saying that we recommend it go forward. But if it can't happen, we're not recommending that we invest in that equipment at this time. Likewise, with the audio, if the audio equipment is not available and working well, then it shouldn't be used. Not every room is going to be that amenable to it. You can have audio in this room. The sound quality may or may not be that good coming through the television. We would have to test it.
Correct. Thank you.
So the motion's been made. Do you all understand the motion that's been made? And it's been seconded? Yes, Mr. Benoit.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just wanted to respond or perhaps clarify my statement from before. Although the planning board had not had any constructive approvals, that's not to say there weren't any delays in some of their applications based on attendance. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. There had been instances where, I'm not going to say that we didn't reach our deadline because there's no constructive approvals with us, but there are times at with the applicant would sign a continuance form and thus extend the deadline, but there weren't instances where we reached anything constructively. So, and I agree with the first part of your question that there are instances like that, and I will gladly provide those.
Mrs. Goodrich.
Just to wrap up here, I appreciate Mr. Benoit being able to answer some of the questions tonight off the cuff, but certainly I would hope that all of that information is included in a written report for all members.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And now for the second part.
And this would go to your point, Mr. Chairman, about other committees, and that's why I'm concerned. As you say, this is going to impact every committee in town. So it is an august responsibility before we put it into place. And when I made my motion, I was well aware of the requirements because we had been provided with it. So I did not enter into this willy-nilly. But I do feel that when boards request things, that they should get answers. I don't think we should just say, we'll take it. And so that is probably a legacy of my prior frustration with prior boards of selectmen who took things under advisement and, well, 10 years later, nothing's happened. So that was the reason for my push for this, shall we say. So my motion will be that we request the town clerk to give us a written opinion whether a committee who is posted in a room that does not have either a phone or a town phone, I should be specific because that is in the policy, or video equipment for video conferencing, whether they can adjourn from that room at the last minute, because this all talks about 24 hours. It's a 48-hour requirement, as we all know, to post. So if somebody calls you 24 hours, you're not going to be able to change the location. So I just want to know from her a written opinion if they can, in some fashion, change the location if they find in an emergency situation that they need to meet in another room.
Through the chair, just follow up on that. That, the clerk will answer that, but part of that is in the policy, if within 24 hours the request is made, and some communities had less than 24 hours, some had more. So we could certainly, move it out to 48 hours. But oftentimes, if it's an illness, it's not a 48-hour thing, so the 24 seemed fair. But that being said, if the equipment isn't available, we were recommending that we not switch rooms and not, that the chair at that point say the room is not available, it's already taken by someone else, and therefore it's denied. So we can still have the clerk give that answer, but I think the policy addresses the what if of your question. What if that happens? Then if that happens, the chair has to say, I'm sorry, we can't do audio or video of that meeting because we don't have the capacity, it's not available that night.
Okay. Have you got, excuse me.
I do have it written down, yeah.
You have it, thank you very much.
And I will provide it to the manager.
All right,
Thanks.
the motion been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Cupping, can you just read the motion again?
You want me to do it exactly that same way?
Well, it is. No, that's why I want you to just read the motion.
It is, well, I didn't write out the motion, I wrote out my question, really, because
Okay.
I do need props. It is to ask, to request an opinion from the town clerk regarding the open meeting law posting requirements. So I did see that in the policy that the manager refers to, but in the case of a regulatory board, especially the ZBA, which meets once a month, it would be great if they could move to another room if the opportunity presented itself. But that's not part of the motion, so I apologize. Just ask if a board posted in one room, if they find that they lacked a quorum, but someone wanted to participate remotely, could they somehow, within 24 hours, change the location of their meeting place so that they could participate?
Okay.
Does that make it clear as mud?
No, it's just there was a lot in the middle again, and that's my concern, that motions are getting lost. So I think that we can say, ask the town clerk for a written opinion as to whether a committee can call a meeting to order in the room they were posted and then adjourn to another meeting
Location.
place.
Yeah, that's fine.
We don't need the, the remote participation, because I think I would support it as a general question, unrelated to the remote participation, whether a committee can call a meeting to order in one room and then adjourn to another room for whatever reason, if, we had overflow and we needed to move to a bigger room. So I would support it if we don't include the language.
If that works for you, I'm happy to make that the wording.
Do we understand the?
I think we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it will help to have it in writing, and then we'll go back and check the
We want to be sure that everybody understands the motion that's made. And it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay. We have no tabled items. And Board of Selectmen member items, we have none. Is there any public comment? Being none, we have minutes in front of us from February 23rd, 2015, February 26th of 2015, and March 9th of 2015. Are there any errors, corrections, comments? Being none, I'll accept them as presented. And
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, and good night.